one of many in a series. I call it the Occasional Speaker Series. We're going to be running this all year. For those of you not familiar with World Usability Day, I'm going to tell you a little about it right now. Next slide, please. So today, we're going to be talking about trust and AI. I think, so for those who are observing, if you could just be on mute just for the start, and then we will have time to chat later. I heard an echo. Anyway, so I'm going to do a little introduction about World Usability Day and some background. And then we're going to dive into the role of trust and AI. I will spend a little bit of time going over the basics of AI. I know that it's helpful for those who aren't as well versed in artificial intelligence, just to understand a little bit about the field. I have Jessica Welch and Colleen McCreaton, who will be our co-presenters, and also Sharon Botnick and Laura Coate, who we're hoping will be able to get in soon. I had a technical issue, that's why she got bounced out. They'll be helping with the breakout groups. And then we will have a very interactive breakout session. We'll let go there. And then we'll do a playback at the end as a summary. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so a quick introduction to World Usability Day for those of you who do not know what it is. World Usability Day was started by myself, the Usability Professionals Association, and Nigel Bevan in 2005. And the idea was to raise awareness of the importance of making products and services easier to use. So here we are, fast forward to 2020, and you can see the map for the events that have been going on this year. We decided to not just focus on a single day this year. We decided, since we're all mostly remote anyway, we're going to do online events and do online events that help us kick off important topics, which was the original intention of World Usability Day, that the day itself, the second Thursday in November, would be used to kick off events, initiatives, and activities all around the world. So the speaker series that we're in right now is one of those. We've been doing several webinars on usable angst and the usability of police and community interaction. And this one we're doing today, I'm hoping, is one of many we also build on, the role of trust in AI, which is incredibly important. But World Usability Day was started to change the world, and I just want to tell you about what that means. Next slide. We actually wanted to start a revolution. We wanted to start a revolution to make sure that users and developers understand that things should work for them, that users should never be blaming themselves when something doesn't work. How many times have you guys been doing user sessions when you hear a user go, "Oh, I'm sure it's me, I'm not good at technology"? I actually one time was doing sessions with surgeons who were saying that. They were saying, "I'm not very good at technology," which blew my mind, because obviously they were good at technology because they were surgeons. However, for some reason, they felt like if they made a mistake, they blamed themselves. So the idea of World Usability Day is to say, let's stop blaming people and start blaming the actual machine for the problem people are having with machines, and let's develop our technology so that we make it work for everyone. And so that's the rallying cry of World Usability Day. So with that in mind, we'll dive now into the actual content. The role of trust in AI systems. Next slide, please. I'm going to just spend a few minutes describing artificial intelligence basics 101, so that everyone is on the same point of departure, so that when we do our breakouts, we understand what we're talking about. Artificial intelligence originally was thought of as, how can we develop an intelligence like a person, but it's in a machine? Next slide. And the best way to describe it, for those who don't know, is the Turing test. So many of you probably heard of Alan Turing. Many people say he's the inventor of computing machines. And he had this really wonderful test, which I love because it's so simple. How can I tell, this is Alan Turing saying, how can I tell if a machine is intelligent? Well, the test is, if I use a machine and I can't tell that it's a machine, if I think I'm talking to a human, then the machine passes the Turing test. And that means it's so intelligent that I, as a human being, can't actually tell that I'm talking to a machine. So let's think about that as we move forward. Do these AI systems pass the Turing test? Next. So there's a whole bunch of different components of artificial intelligence. I'm just going to hit on a couple real high level. And that'll be expert systems, intelligent agents, natural language processing, neural networks, and machine learning. Robots and chatbots will hit real quick, but we won't focus on so much. Yes, next, expert systems. Expert systems is what I learned about in graduate school a long time ago. And it was one of the basics of artificial intelligence, which was basically a system that knew enough to solve complex problems, but was basically hard-coded with heuristics and other decision-making factors. So for example, an expert system could be something like what we would call WebMD right now, which knows all these symptoms. And then you just put in, questions or your symptoms, and then it, as an expert, tells you, it gives you a diagnosis. Next. Intelligent agents are, some people say they're just pieces of software, and that is true, but they're little functions that act on their own, directing activities to do other things, right? To find information and sort it, to understand something, and to build a learning environment. Next. Adaptable agents is another form of intelligent agents, and it looks specifically at data that it's collecting about behavior, and then it makes adjustments based on what it's learned, and then it changes its behavior as it goes. Next. Natural language processing. Now, what's interesting about this, and specifically with my World Usability Day hat on, is natural language processing has to look at each language separately. So any language that it wants to, interpret has to have a separate set of heuristics. So what it's going to do is understand the specific language by looking at the linguistics, by looking at how words are put in sentences and what the meanings are, to pull out the meaning of the word of, the language, and then apply it. So natural language processing could also be used with, say, text processor, which reads my, let's say right now, I'm going to have a voice to text processor that'll take what I'm saying, put it into text, and then the natural language processor would help us understand what the text says. Next. Neural networks is my favorite one and the most complex, been around for a really, really long time. And it basically is mimicking biological biological components that develop in our brain. So it's mirroring the neural network in our brain, and our brain makes connections based on things we know. And if you think about a child learning about the world, it's building its neural network to understand how the world works. So if you think about a specific category, let's say cats, if we want to train a neural network on what a cat is, we have to spend a lot of time first showing it pictures of what is a cat, and then like, what's not a cat? Not a cat, right? This is not a cat. This is not a cat. So we'd spend the whole time populating the neural networks with what's a cat and what's not a cat, and then start adding more and more images, more and more information, so that the network would build itself to start to interpolate itself what is a cat. So then maybe it could look at a lion and say, oh yeah, maybe that's a cat. But it could look at a dog and say, no, that's not a cat. So it's building based on what it already knows. Next slide. So the key with the neural networks is that this is the most important thing to remember. With no prior knowledge, they start to generate characteristics of things that, like, based on what they already know. So they're building a knowledge base based on a few things. and it builds out. So here's some examples. Google search, all full of neural networks. YouTube, neural networks. Image recognition databases, all neural networks. Next. Machine learning is a cousin, but not exactly the same as neural networks. And I could spend the entire hour just talking about this slide. So I gave you a little reference. And the idea here is that machine learning is looking at patterns and inferences, and it's not necessarily filling in holes so much as looking at trends and then putting learnings together. Next. Recommender systems is probably what you're most used to. They use adaptable agents to recommend specific behavior. So it's really a combination of a couple of things, adaptable agents and expert systems. Amazon's a great example because it says, based on what you already bought, here's some other things but people like you, people who bought Windex also bought Clorox. Okay, next. Robots, we're not going to spend so much time talking about today, but they are many different kinds. They are autonomous. They do use artificial intelligence. Some of them operate on their own. Some of them are just to help machines do things better. But they're certainly in the category of artificial intelligence. Next. And then chatbots. We're all familiar with chatbots. Chatbot is really a chatting robot, right? Chatbot. So it is robotics, it is natural language processing, it is all of those things. And a lot of the chatbots I've used would definitely not pass the Turing test. Next. Finally, here's one example that pulls lots of things together, and that's YouTube. So we got a recommender system. It's a neural network that's built on algorithms that keep watching what gets you excited, what gets you to watch, and then it encourages you, it makes more suggestions. It looks at things you're typing or things that are being said in the video with the natural language processing. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and it's an example of everything that builds together. And next, I think I'm gonna turn it over. Oh, sorry, last slide. Good transition too. Jessica's about to tell you more about this, but there's a few places where errors in AI certainly make us wonder if we can trust a device. Alexa is certainly one. Spell checker, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes the suggestions for autocorrect just completely freak me out. But think about this. Remember I was talking about an expert system, WebMD? So let's think about the fact that historical data, that's fine, you can try. Historically, data for health studies, medical data that is used to train systems has often come from a database of white men. So if I'm a Black woman or even a white woman, how do I know, how do I trust that the recommendations that this expert system's giving me are actually right for me, that they're not biased? Okay, that's it. And I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Hey, thanks, Elizabeth. So I'm Jessica Welch. I'm a UX designer at IBM in the AI applications business unit, and I am currently in Amesbury, Massachusetts. But usually pre-COVID, I was in the Andover office in Massachusetts. So I wanted to share a little bit about trust and users' level of trust in AI. And as Elizabeth said, we're starting to freak out about some of the things that machines are picking up from us and learning from us, and we feel a bit out of control. And this is becoming a problem. And I want to talk about why it's becoming a problem and how we as designers can do something to build more user trust going forward in our UI. In 2019, a user research group named Proximity Lab surveyed product owners, designers, business execs to find out how trustworthy AI is in making important decisions. And most responded somewhat trustworthy. So why is that? AI gets a lot of press, as Elizabeth said, these days. It's mostly bad. We have hear about reports of slips and hacks, and they're quite alarming. It causes us to be concerned about our health and security. Uber's self-driving car decided not to take any action when it saw a pedestrian and killed that pedestrian. There have been a lot of deep fakes altering people's identities and videos and posting on social media. Celebrities, politicians have been vulnerable here, especially. Apple's Face ID in iPhone 10, supposedly secure authentication, was fooled by a 3D mask with no eyes. Microsoft's Adaptable Language Chatbot was corrupted by Twitter trolls and became anti-Semitic. This bad press causes concern, especially when it's a threat to our health and security, as I said. Proximity Labs also surveyed about our feelings towards AI, and it's a love-hate relationship. We are very mixed emotion when it comes to AI. Certainly, there are a lot of positives, but there are also negatives. There's a huge, number one is excitement, and this is the biggest bar. And note, this survey question asked participants to select all that apply. So, but the top bar, we're very excited about AI. We're also very worried. Bars 2, 3, and 4 show that. And then we're also not on the fence, not on the fence, not sure about AI and wanting to take a wait and see approach. And that's bars 5 and 6. But one thing is for sure, and that is the very last bar, or the black thereof, shows that almost all of us have feelings about it one way or the other, or maybe even both, or all of the above. So we personify AI as if it were human, because it feels that way. It feels like it's in control. Even Elon Musk, who is the poster child for AI and innovation, refers to AI as evil. Which seems ironic. We learn about areas where it is acting human-like and making decisions and making mistakes, and sometimes for us. And we feel this loss of control. And it's doing things for us and messing up. And that's what's causing concern. And that leads to fear, which leads to anxiety. But then Elon also says this: it's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. So it's all about control. We feel better when we're in control. We're less stressed, we're more content. And it makes sense that if we relinquish control to a machine, that we are going to worry about what it's going to do on our behalf. So maybe giving users more control in the UI will help them feel better about the AI. So here's a generic, I'm sorry, advance the slide. Here's a generic needs statement. As a user, I want AI to do my job so that I am freed up to do other things that I can spend my time on that are more valuable to me. When we train another person to do our work, we're not confident they're going to do it right the first time. It takes a while. The training, there's a learning curve. And the improvement starts slowly, as you can see in the learning curve, and then increases rapidly and then levels off. And our confidence in the training, the knowledge transfer, really depends on the task. If the task is pretty straightforward and easy, we're more confident that this transfer of knowledge will happen, and that'll happen faster. If it's more complex, the task, then our confidence is not so great, and we know that it's going to take longer. And so just as it is training with humans, training with AI is the same. We know that complexity leads to a longer period of time. And our trust also depends on risk. How important or critical is AI's success in getting it right? Or success or failure. If it's a help chat bot, a mistake is not a big deal. But if it's an airplane failing to alert you that equipment is at risk of failure, then this is a big deal. And particularly damaging are the mistakes that occur due to bias, because this compromise what is and what isn't the truth. And this, we tend to blame AI as being biased. AI is biased, AI is evil. But AI is not really to blame. It's in the making of the sausage, right? It's us. in his book, and so that's a good thing because we can improve on this. We can create AI to work for us. In his book, Design for Cognitive Bias, Thomas talks about the many different biases we all have, and all humans have biases. And AI is just, as he says, a glorified prediction machine. He says if we point it at a racist, sexist world, it's going to make racist, sexist predictions. So Amazon learned this the hard way a few years ago. Their HR used AI to review resumes and make hiring decisions, recommendations. The software was found to be more favorable to male applicants because its model was trained on resumes submitted to Amazon over the past decade when many more male candidates were hired. So it was pointing at males, at a group, a population of male candidates. And AI was trained to find resumes like this. AI downgraded the resumes that contained the word women or implied that an applicant was female, like attending women's college or having a non-male name. Because we are training AI, it's up to us to uncover the biases before the making of the sausage, or if we uncover them while, it's up to us to address them. And this is one of the ways we can help unblock this issue of user trust. I'm sorry. We can also, sorry, I thought I put myself on mute. We can also feed it clean data, a balanced diet, I like to say, a very diverse population. The bigger the sample size, the better, and keep testing and continually watch for inaccuracies. And not just feed and forget it, but keep watching and doing something about it. We need to adopt a more scientific approach and process. I have a scientist friend who shared with me her approach, and really the approach of scientists in general, is that when you prove your hypothesis, yes, of course you celebrate, but you don't stop there. In fact, you spend the rest of your life trying to disprove your theory. You poke holes into it, and this helps because we're all learning, we're all building on that knowledge. It's acquired knowledge, and if we just discover that what we thought was a planet is no longer a planet, we need to continue to find reasons why and to share those with others. And that helps society. And the last chart I'm going to share from the survey, the Proximity Labs survey, is about the biggest challenges to user adoption. Again, it was a select all that apply here, but number one was accuracy, which is no surprise. If accurate, then we think AI is good. If inaccurate, if it's making mistakes, not so good. In fact, and the more of a risk it is to our health and our security, our welfare, the less we like it. Privacy, doubt, and fear. Obviously, those things, if it's threatening, then we don't like it. If AI is accurate, then users are more likely to trust it. If not accurate, we're not likely to trust it. And so we can all focus on these things as designers, focus on how we can build accuracy, but build that user adoption by helping with accuracy, privacy, addressing these feelings of the users. So how do we do that? A quick checklist, and I say start small. Consider the less risky uses of AI to boost accuracy. So start with something like customer service, not crisis management. So obviously, Elizabeth showed a lot of chatbots, and there are a lot of them out there. But this is a good thing because if your help, or your HR is messing up and you need to iron out those wrinkles, that's better than if some kind of system, security system or banking system goes down, right? And privacy and identities are stolen. So number two, big impression. So leave a good first impression. Resist the temptation to just get something out the door. If users don't trust it, they're less likely to adopt it, and they're often only going to give it one shot. So you want to get it right out of the gate. So the more that they can see and they like what they see, the more they understand that they're getting value out of it, especially if it's changing the way users have done things. So habits, processes familiar with them, these tasks these flows that they do, that they've been doing for years. As designers, we know it's hard to introduce a new way of doing things and to get users to adopt it. And AI is certainly a new way of doing something, a new task, or the same task. But on the good side, it's to free you up. Number 3, be transparent. So explain how AI has come to that insight, that recommendation. Unveil as much as you can about the details, but in a progressively disclosed way. So most important details first, and then let them peel back the onion and understand a little bit why the AI came to that insight or that recommendation, that suggestion. Cite sources and show how to replicate findings. I mean, this is what we do. This is what scientists do. So somebody can replicate your whole study. This is important. It helps people understand how AI was trained, might be working, and can address some of the things that might be issues later on. Acknowledge that the early phases may be riddled with faults. So it's trial and error. It's training, and it's, I like to say, a precocious child, but it is still a child. And so while it can throw out these great things, these phenomenal, amazing things, and save a lot of time, it can say something really dumb or make a huge mistake that is very critical and life-threatening. So number 4, scaffolding. So slowly wean the amount of detail as the user's confidence builds. We know that users' feedback can be from the start of a release, not enough transparency because they don't understand, to now it's too much clutter because I get it. And that can happen in a very short time in this business. So just pay attention to what the user is doing, but gradually, scaffold them, introduce it to them, and then pull them off of it slowly. The investment is huge, number 5. So like a vaccine development, there need to be many, many trials, many phases until efficacy. So set these expectations early with your customers, your stakeholders, on the amount of time it's going to take to onboard users on the AI. And the payoff is also huge. Underscore the benefits, provide evidence and statistics of how much employee time has been saved in processing these large amounts of data, or the ability to free up an employee now to do more strategic work. And this engages the employee too, and increases employee engagement and productivity. So in the end, AI offers a load of value and can delight. And that's what we all want to do as designers. We want to delight our users, but if and only if there is user trust. So it's a delicate balance, but we can deliver it. So thanks. And I will now turn it over to Colleen to introduce the breakout sessions.
So hi, everybody. I'm Colleen McCretton. I am a UX designer at Fidelity Investments, just outside of Boston. I'm at my home, just outside of Boston, as most people are, I think, these days working remotely. And I work for a part of Fidelity called the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology. And what we do is we try to look 3 to 5 years out for technology trends. So artificial intelligence is one of the things that my team is exploring on the implications that it will have for companies like Fidelity. And when you think about things like, financial services and your retirement account, or planning for your kids to go to college, or choosing your health benefits, those are all things where Fidelity has business interests. The importance, those are really big life moments where the trust and the accuracy are really, really, really important. So these questions about trust in AI are things that we ask ourselves about a lot. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to break up into, I think it's going to be 6 groups, and we've got some discussion prompts where we've put together some scenarios. And Jessica, can you go to the next slide, please? So based on your group number, you're going to be given a design, not a design prompt, more of a discussion prompt or a scenario. And we've got one group with a conversational interface, image recognition for facial recognition, recommender systems, image recognition combined with a recommender system, medical diagnostic system, hands-free in an auto, luggage scanning, and a digital assistant. So these are all real-world applications where AI comes into play. And as designers, can you go on to the next slide, please, Jessica? What we want to do is we want to think about how we can use some of the tools that we have in our tool belt in this world of AI to give the appropriate cues as to when to trust and when to question some of the information that may be coming from some of these intelligent systems. So when we break you into groups, we're going to ask that you make introductions. Most of the groups will have facilitators starting with them. Some we might have them pop in and out. We have a pretty good group here together. We're going to have, actually, let me put it in the chat right now. So we have a document that I'm going to put in the chat. So if you guys can just click on the link in the chat to open the document that's got the scenarios in it, you're going to find the scenario that goes along with your group number. Every group should have a scribe or a note taker and a spokesperson, because we're going to come back and sort of talk about what you guys discussed in the breakout room. We're going to meet for about 30 minutes. And if you could, we've been muting everybody just to cut down on the background noise, but if you could put up a picture or go on video, that would be great. I think that will be helpful for the conversation. And again, if you want to take notes in the chat, then folks can save them afterwards. So I think with that, we're probably ready to move on to the breakouts, Elizabeth.
Yes, we are definitely ready. So you have been assigned to a breakout. There's 6 breakout groups. And so I'm going to basically click a button and move, and you'll be in your group. Oops. So hang on one second. I see we dropped a few people. So I am just moving 2 people right now. Yeah. Okay. So hang in there. You're going to be in your group in a minute. Okay. And hopefully you guys have all done this before. So you won't be surprised when you get into your groups. And go. You have to accept that you're going into the group, by the way. You'll get a little note and it'll say, come into whatever group. And okay. Looks like almost everyone. Oh, we have a few people not here. Okay. Okay. I'll be out here bouncing in and out. So if anyone has any trouble, just come out and talk to me.
Hey, Elizabeth, I do not see that group link.
Yeah, you're supposed to be in group 1, and it's weird. You didn't get a. Well,
Maybe it's because I was sharing the screen.
Yeah, I wonder if I can.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it was probably buried, right? I also have a few people that don't seem to have come in, so I maybe jump in and out for a second, but you're okay. Yep, you're gone. Okay, so who do we have that hasn't been in? 3 people. You guys are still here. I don't know if you're sort of not involved or whatever. If you, okay. Who's room 4? That's me. Okay. This person, 2. All right. So if you have problems, let me know. Hi.
Hi, hello.
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great, how are you? Okay.
So do you understand what we're supposed to do now?
Not exactly, actually.
Fine. So I'm going to show you. Okay, here we go. So hopefully you'll be able to see. We've got a few. So you're group 2. Okay, so the idea is that we want to talk about one scenario. So scenario, this is you guys, you're group 2. Okay, so it's a conversational chatbot. So basically the scenario you guys have to talk about is there's a chatbot on financial services website, and it's supposed to help I'm reading what you're probably reading too, that it's supposed to help customers, but there was a woman, 50-year-old who's was born in India and having a little trouble getting on after she's lost her husband. So the question is, if you think about a chatbot, you think about several things we mentioned, like what kind of training data was used? Do we think that there was training data specifically about middle-aged women in India? Let's just say it's a global company, so they might be based in the United States or in Europe. I mean, they certainly could be based in Asia, but for this one, we'll say, I'm leaning towards, I'll just tell you, I'm leaning towards the fact that the data set that they looked at was probably not diverse enough. And it's possible this 50-year-old woman from India maybe is having some issues because of maybe the natural language processing isn't quite working for her. And so what would her state of mind be? And how would she be dealing with this situation? And what is the implications if it's misinterpreting what she has to say, and how is that going to impact her ability to trust the system?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea, is you guys talk about that amongst yourselves for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and I can carry on with you. Do you understand what the little activity is?
Yes, yeah.
I have a question. So we will discuss the questions that prompted in this slide, and are we going to come up with some solution?
Yeah,
or
yeah. Come up with an idea that's a solution. That's exactly right. That's
okay.
exactly right. So Tim, why don't you take a screenshot about this? Because if I leave and go to another group, I'm afraid I'm not sure if you're going to be able to still see it.
It's
We're
okay.
actually looking at the
Right.
You have the document.
Yeah.
You have the document. Perfect. Okay. I'll be back soon.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Later.
Oh, I didn't leave the room. I just okay. The group I just. So I don't know, you guys, there's a couple people on. Okay, hang on.
Hi, Elizabeth. I just got pulled back from the breakout room.
Oh, why? Okay. I thought I did not. I don't know why that happened, but I'll put you back in. So you were in 3.
No, I was in 3, but I was in 3 with 2 people who couldn't do audio.
Oh,
One
I
of them
see.
was text messaging with
Oh.
me, and then the other one wasn't even interacting at all.
Okay.
So
So do you want to, maybe I'll just put everyone back in a different group, the one that I was just in. I'll just, trying to think of what the best way to do this is. So, oops, why did they all, okay, well, I don't know what just happened. I honestly don't know why everyone just came back. Maybe we should
yeah,
just,
the breakout rooms, the breakout room,
Ended.
we got a notification they ended.
Oh, and it looks like we lost some people.
yeah, we lost some people before, but you know what? I think we've gotten to be a smaller group. So why don't we just do this as a large group?
Okay.
Because
Yeah, so
incredible technical difficulties. And I don't know if there's still people in the group. Sorry, people. First of all, thank you for everyone who's hanging in there with us. We've had all sorts of strange issues. It looks to me, I'm just trying to debug this, but I think we should try to have the conversation all together.
Yeah, I think.
yeah, so Jessica, I have all the use cases in the appendix of
Okay.
the slides.
Okay, let me just share my screen.
So I'll just comment that it would be awesome if this was more intelligent. For sure, we are not passing the Turing test at all, as far as I'm concerned. I've done these groups a lot. I'm not sure why this is happening, but let's go.
So Colleen, is there a slide you want me to share?
I think if you go ahead 3. Next one, this one. Yep.
This one? Okay.
Nope, sorry, previous one.
How might we?
Okay, so if we think about how might we prompt? So how might we create experiences that engender the appropriate level of trust using the following use cases and their considerations as inspiration for our ideation? So we can just go to the first use case. So we've got a recommender system for medical diagnostics. A 29-year-old woman comes in to the doctor. It's a week after she had a baby. She's retaining water and suffering from shortness of breath. Her doctor enters her information into a research tool for suggested testing and courses of treatment. So what do we think about that, that scenario and where we could craft a UX around such a system?
Right. And it's interesting. We were talking about this in my group. So maybe the 2 people who were in my group, Ya Ying and Zhang Ying. I don't know if I hope I pronounced your names right, but we were talking about this. Yeah, good. We were talking about this ourselves. So go ahead. I see you unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Sure. Actually, we were talking about another financial system, and I just started reading this.
Oh, right.
Scenario.
You were talking about that, but it's up on mine, right? So the issue is very similar in the sense, I'll just say, because we were talking about the financial system in our group, and the issue is what happens if it's a very, like, this is a similar big picture issue, right? Like, this is a very important life or death or financially precipitous moment, and the person, the user, is under a lot of stress, and now they're having to deal with a system that maybe wasn't optimized for them. So that's just one thing on top of another. So how do we start to solve for those problems? And I know our group was talking about it in the financial dimension, but I guess what I was thinking is there was similar issues in terms of just, what happens when it's a critical life function, there's a system you have to use, You're under a lot of stress, and yet the AI isn't optimized for you.
Well, and I think there's two things, Elizabeth, to think about as well, because there's the patient who is the one who is sort of in the life or death situation, but then there's also the doctor. So the doctor is potentially the one that's going to be using the tool.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So there's that additional level of abstraction. And, you know, at what point do you, you know, as an expert using an expert system, when do you say, I know more than the system, and when does that flip to the system knows more than me? So for example, a project that I worked on, I want to say in 2018, was a very large victim of confirmation bias, where folks would accept the system and believe the system and trust the system when it told them, like, it confirmed what they thought they already knew. But if it told them something new, so they asked us to build a system for them to try to give new insights, but anytime it told them something that was unexpected or that they didn't already know, they thought it was wrong.
Oh, wow. The implications are huge.
So again, it's like that balance of what, you know, what you have as a human, you know, like the human nature of myself and what I know and my schooling and my life experience that I bring to the table. But there's a whole world outside of what you know and what you've experienced that, you know, one of the things that computers are really good at is scaling and crunching lots of data. So, you know, an artificial intelligence system can take in a whole bunch of stuff that a human being never could. And at what point is that a good thing? And at what point is that, you know, not a good thing because of that, the lens of prior experience, and, you know, sort of the context that you bring to the table.
Anyone want to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment. So my background is I have an interest in artificial intelligence. I'm on the technology side of things, and I joined this. I registered for this presentation or meeting because I was curious as to how UX groups are handling some of the what's called holy grails of artificial intelligence. And I think one of those is a couple of those is transparency and explainability. So as Colleen was just saying, that technology is able to process lots and lots of data, but when it comes to trust and human interactions with an artificially intelligent system, I mean, how do we know that the system is trained correctly? And so to establish a trust, the system really needs to be able to explain in terms that the user can understand. So it's not just, I mean, the system knows how it calculates stuff. It can say, yeah, I crunched a bunch of numbers and I used this formula and stuff like that. But that's not a very pleasant user experience, because then the user has to become the expert themselves to be able to confirm or validate that the AI system is actually correct and therefore trustworthy. So yeah, on the technical side of things with artificial intelligence, transparency as well as explainability is key to having users or humans, I guess is the more appropriate response, because I don't know, technically speaking, users can be both other systems, other artificial intelligence systems, as well as humans. But yeah, as far as human and AI system interaction, there definitely needs to be the ability to explain how an AI system comes to its conclusions or its predictions, or advice on what to do with your health or your money or other things that are really important to people.
And so one of the other things that I've been thinking about just in, it sort of gets to that the transparency part is that if you're having an interaction with a human being, you can sort of tell their level of confidence. Like if I'm going to choose a doctor, I would choose a doctor based on like somebody else that I know and trust uses that same doctor, or they're affiliated with a medical institution that has a really good reputation, or they have a specialty that is applicable to my, that's what important to me, whether it's, like natural medicine, or like they are pediatrics or family medicine, or whatever it is. Is there a parallel that we could look at in sort of a technical world where some of those same paradigms could be built into that transparency to say, Elizabeth has endorsed this system and I know Elizabeth, so that increases my faith in system. But then you go back to the notion of the Amazon reviews, where they're paying people to write positive reviews of junk products on Amazon. So it just gets really, really complicated.
This is such a great conversation. And, I first of all, everyone who's still with us, I really appreciate you hanging in there. We did want to have a dialogue, and that's what we're having. So thank you for that. Thank you, Simon, and anyone else who wants to jump in. For me, I'm just going to share my screen real quick because I want to show you something that got me all started with this. And for those of you who may or may not know Ben Schneiderman, but he's one of my mentors from long ago, and he's on our board here. And he wrote, the New York Times wrote this article about him. And the whole thing is he was saying, and you can read on it, but here he is. His basic idea, and you can look at this article and see his name up there and Google him. His whole idea was that we need to combine ethics in the AI practice, and that is human-centered AI, HCAI, and that's this field that we're trying to promote, because it's saying, there is this ethical element, and if it's coming from the UX and the human factors and the usability people, so be it. But we're thinking about the humans, and the idea is that we need to apply some of the human nature, right? So the part where we're how do we know this is good? We know, as Colleen was saying, as Simon was saying, that we see things, we recognize something that somebody else showed us. There's all these human elements, and that for us not to include that is at our own peril. So he's starting a whole movement, an entire movement about this. In fact, there's another paper I'll show you in a minute. He wrote, so Ben Schneiderman is from computer science department at the University of Maryland. He's actually emeritus, but he wrote a whole call to arms, a call to action about this. And I strongly recommend you look at it, just because I think it's hitting exactly to what we've been saying. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can talk more. But so I'm curious if anyone has any other thoughts on that.
I think another thing that's interesting, though, that you brought up, Elizabeth, is the notion of ethics. And I think, Jessica, you were talking about like new jobs that will be coming out in the industry in terms of, AI ethicists, or I'm not sure exactly what the title was.
Right. So yeah. So I had heard there's actually a great podcast I'm going to plug right now, AI Zen, for any of you interested in hearing about these things. But one of the things they talked about were these new positions that were going to be coming out, and one transparency designer, and it very much aligns with what we've been talking about, explainability, transparency, really important to build that user trust so that they're going to adopt it. So, and so now they have these positions that that companies are looking for to fill: transparency designer, AI ethicist, and what was that? Insights analysis or an analyst. So ways we can engage these users and verify the information that we're using to back check what is being shared. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how you would qualify for some of these positions, but yeah, it's a whole new world out there, and it is exciting because people are thinking about it. It's we need to, like this article says, we need to think about these things. And it can be from, it can be designers, you know, carrying the baton or whatever. It can be all of us, I think. And we are, you know, it's very much, Colleen, I think you said about, it's very much like how we go about trusting humans. We don't just trust a total stranger. We do that background knowledge, we do that investigation, and we look for information like, oh, well, I know it's a highly reputable, company. I've heard that organization before, or it came as, you know, I was referred by a friend who I trust. And so there are these things, these, you know, this information that piles up and that gives this sense of security. And same thing with AI. You know, AI is not a human, but if it's giving us information that builds our trust in it, then we're more prone to trust it. You know, we're more, you know, accepting of it. And but just as, you know, as human interaction, we hesitate when it's, I'm not going to trust my you know, newborn baby with a total stranger, you know. And so there are certain risky, you know, there's certain things that we're willing to do. And, you know, the less critical, the easier it is to release it. And I think so too with AI, the task.
That was one of the things that a couple of years ago, one of the projects that I worked on, we broke up how we were gathering data to try to build one of our first algorithms. And we decided that we classified the data that we were interested in, and we said we really could only ask, we called them first date questions, where you, like, the kinds of things that you would ask somebody on a first date, like the innocuous things of like, oh, what kind of music do you like? Have you seen any movies recently? Where did you go to college? Like those kinds of questions that don't really get into the deep philosophical, like, important stuff that, you know, you might have as a family conversation. We're not talking religion, we're not talking politics. And sort of test out and see how good we could, like, how good we, or how well we could do with that level of information, and build a trust to say, okay, if you give us this information, we're going to give you some value back, and you can trust us with this information, that we're not going to, you know, we're going to use it in your best interest. Because I think one of the other things that can really be a struggle is, okay, if I give you, like, information has become a new currency. So I give you this information to get some value, but then once you have that information, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to do things that are good for me, or are you going to do things that are good for you? You know, and I think about, you know, my daughter is a first-year college student, and she is constantly getting, you know, oh, you looked at this on Amazon, you looked at, you know, this on the Target website, you looked at this on, you know, insert name of shopping site here. And she does not have the kind of money to be spending, but she also doesn't have necessarily the impulse control when she's sad or when she's tired to say, you know, now's not the time to, you know, buy this really cool t-shirt.
Yeah.
So, you know, just because they know, like, they probably know that she's online after midnight. They probably know what her favorite color is. They probably know that she pretty easily drops 20 bucks. So they could use all of this to, get 20 bucks from her on a really regular basis. But they also know that she's 19. They also know it's her first time living away from home. They also know that, she's a dependent in college. So like, and that's not even really a really big ethical question. That is around, sort of the nudge to buy a t-shirt or not. But once you get into bigger questions like, finances and health and, legislation and politics and public safety, it gets really scary really fast.
Yeah, I think we've seen a good examples of the abuse of this type of level of intelligence with social media and its effect on politics with, Cambridge Analytica and have you all seen the documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma?
Yep.
That's a really good. So the idea is that these systems have all this intelligence behind them that are designed to keep your attention as a human, keep your human attention. And so, obviously that can be the whole monetization of that for, using this to essentially exploiting, human attention and interaction for, for the gain of whoever's in control of that, whether it's a political, misinformation campaign or consumerism. So I think so there's a whole, debate about how do we combat that right now. I think that's, and I don't know if I said before, but I'm in the information security, profession. So I am, my mode of operation is always thinking, how is a bad guy going to, exploit this great, feature or service that is being offered. So I don't think the challenge is to, how do we get people's attention? I think we've already, how do we keep people engaged? I think we've already solved that problem by the fact that, that we have these problems with social media. The fact that they're being exploited is evidence that there has been a manipulation of trust. So it's not just about gaining trust, it's about whether that trust is, valid.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. Like, one of the things that I feel like, as a designer, I feel like I should be putting out into the world, I'm not sure. Like, to say, okay, like, you might like this, but I'm not really sure if it's good for you. Or,
Sure.
like, and that goes into that transparency to say,
Exactly.
Yeah. This is what I'm doing, and this is, and this is how I'm getting there. And, for example, we were doing something that had some financial calculations, and we were having trouble figuring out the difference between a comma and a period. Well, if the number is, is money, the difference between a decimal point and a comma in, like $1 million versus $1 is, that's a really big deal. And so, we use some UI elements to say, we'll highlight these ones, or we'll put gray around them to say, these ones really are the ones where a human should be double checking that. And that sort of goes back to Elizabeth's point of the, kind of like the computer human partnership, where I think that, the Nielsen's heuristics going in the Wayback Machine of like user control and freedom. It's like, help me get what I need, but then still make it up to me in terms of what I want to do, how I want to use it, where I want to go, I think is an important construct as designers.
right.
Yeah, and I think as designers, you're trying to design a a fluid human interaction experience, but because of all these avenues for exploitation, you've constantly got to put up reminders. The computer is always asking, "Are you sure? Yes or no?" Or maybe, or read this information. So legal agreements, everyone clicks through the streams of text, and legally they're important, but for the user experience, it's an impediment to a fluid user experience, which doesn't help trust in something that is a valid service that is being offered.
And I
So
just,
yeah.
sorry, finish, and then I'll
Oh no, I'm good. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to build on it because of a whole bunch of things. First of all, what I showed you with the HCAI and Ben Schneiderman, I mean, he started the whole point, and I showed it, so if you want to go reference it later, his whole point was, I think we started from the wrong, we started from the wrong place. We didn't do the human-centered piece first. And if we do the human-centered piece first, we by nature have to have ethics built in, because human-centered design is all about making people the best they can be. It's not about making the most money. And that is always the rub, because companies rely on growth. So their priorities to make money and to grow, but that is actually in complete conflict with human-centered technology, because human-centered technology isn't about I'm going to make more money. It's about help me be the best me I can be. Help me make breakout groups on Zoom so that they work. Help me, right? Like, connect. And so that's Ben Schneiderman's whole thing. And that's sort of the direction. I want to timidly step in a different direction too. And I don't know, especially Simon, and I appreciate your being engaged. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Timnit Gebru from Google. She and Google, she's an AI ethicist, used to be at Google, but is now no longer at Google. Why? She was starting to dig into some serious ethical questions about Google's use of neural networks. And that's all I don't really know any more than that. But the issue is, to me, and I'm bringing her up because of this, what do we do now, right? Like, so let's say I'm someone like her who's working there and discovering Google, who is very helpful in so many ways, and they do many wonderful things. But if they're building if the basis of their AI is this neural network that learns about itself and that it is somewhat biased just because of the data set it has, is it too late? I think no. I want to start a usability revolution. So I think no, I think we got to do it all together. And that's why we're running this. But it's a pretty deep systemic issue. So I think it's taking what you guys are saying and even popping it up. But Ben Schneiderman's idea was to create a whole system, and that eventually, we'll see. If you go to the World Usability Day website, there's a tab on the UN initiative. This is his idea. He thinks we should get an organization, the equivalent of the World Health Organization, but usability for technology, right? I'm not sure it's the World Usability Organization. It probably has a better title, but that's the idea, right? Like, how else are we going to fix this? So that's my charge. Use this to be human-centered.
Yeah. I can tell you that in the world of AI, that things like ethics and is it being used for good or evil are hotly debated topics. Even at the technical level, and yeah, and like you said, that's just blown up now with that firing at Google. But and you also gave examples of how you release the Twitter bots on Twitter, and if you're in a racist system, then it's going to come up with racist responses and stuff like that. So the whole question about bias is also something that they're technically trying to resolve, and that whole area about how to mathematically identify what bias is, and defining it, and how that does, and from a technical excuse me, perspective is is a hot topic. So but like I said before about transparency and explainability is key for people to trust, in the sense of that it's trust in the sense that as people, we don't want to feel like we're being taken advantage of, we're being exploited by someone else, whether it's another human or a computer system that some other human, some rich billionaire, or maybe it's the the underground mafia or something like that, because we've got problems with like ransomware. So if your computer system gets infected and you're being extorted for money, then the fact that there was that security incident, when that's all resolved, you're out a bunch of money, and you don't trust the system much anymore. You trust it less, because you had this quite unpleasant extortion experience beforehand.
It's a funny way of putting it. You're right. Very unpleasant extortion experience.
That's an
Yeah.
oxymoron, right?
No, but you're right. I mean, then the question is, I think actually, Simon, I like what you were saying about bias, because if we just focus on bias, which is what we started talking about, that does ripple out a lot of the other issues, right? Because if the data set is diverse, the odds are good bias won't be there. The odds are good that whatever the recommender is saying will be to help us, right? To maybe help us find
I disagree.
Okay.
I think that bias is just the tip of the iceberg, because I think it's more about the transparency.
Okay.
Because so let's just say that we've got a system that's trained with a medical system that's trained with 40-year-old white men, or what's in it. If okay, this system is good for 40-year-old white men, then what you can do is you can use that to learn about what makes it good for 40-year-old white men. Whereas if you try to boil the ocean and get a completely diverse data set to start, then you don't really know where you're good and where you're bad, because there's so many variables in the experiment. Like what Jess was talking about before with the scientific method,
right.
It's that, okay, so if we start doing this, but what we need to do is we need to acknowledge it and say, this is only good, for people who speak with a Boston accent, or this is only good for 40-year-old white men, or this is only good for, I don't know, name another demographic that you could get a data set on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you can, people that you go into the system with the appropriate expectation for engagement. And that if that's not you, your expectation is that your results are going to be flawed. I think one of the things that I learned very early in design school is you can't design for everybody, because there's too much diversity in the world. So what you need to do is you need to need to design for one, but you need to design for a ton of ones. And so what you do is you start with one, and then you build. And if you acknowledge that that Netflix is biased towards, I don't know, 20-something-year-old students, or whatever it is,
But I think it's both too. I mean, like, you know, the transparency, but also the bias. So acknowledging when you see that there is a bias, then yeah,
Exactly.
maybe you design for a small population, but then when you see, wow, well, there's a huge bias there, and people are using this data for, even though I've told them, I've disclaimed all, you know,
Yep.
put disclaimers out there, they're still using it because they trust in me, they trust in the system. And yet now it's my responsibility as the designer, as the producer of this product, to, you know, to set that straight and say, okay, well, now I've got to really test this population, and especially when there's a bias towards a certain race, or a certain social class, or a
Yeah,
certain,
socioeconomic type
or
of things.
religion,
Yeah.
or anything. That's where we see there are people who already have been being hurt by this because it does not apply to them, you know, and we say that it's assumed that it does. And I want to go back to what was said about the social dilemma, because when I saw that, and I'm just curious what you guys think, but for those of you who've seen it, I immediately wanted to take myself off of all social media platforms. I wanted to get and I love Facebook, and I have international relatives in Sweden, and that's the only way we can communicate and share photos. And I think it's wonderful. Facebook is wonderful for certain things. But when I heard from the horse's mouth, you know, that this is what they were doing, and you know what? I didn't doubt it, but it made it feel really wicked. And then I only saw black, right? I only saw a red, or whatever you want to see, black and red, you know. But yeah, but there's a good side too, and I feel like they're you know, we have this obligation to, and especially when it comes to individual users and privacy, we know what they are concerned about. And so if there's a way to make it work, you know, and we talked a little bit too about, there are things the world is doing. I mean, and it's just the US hasn't been been leading the effort in AI, but you know, look at Europe and Google, and, you know, and the privacy, and, you know, and even the state of California has come a long way, but the rest of us have not, you know, but Australia has come. Simon, I think you said you were from Australia. They've done a lot, and coming up with these procedures, policies. The United Nations is talking about it now too. I mean, we're working there, we're getting there, but it's funny. It's like, okay, this blew up in our face, and now we got to kind of, you know, what can we do? But
yeah, well, that's the nature of technology, whether it's, you know, AI or technology in general, is that it's advancing at a pace that's faster than, you know, us regular people to you know, cope with. So we have all these systems, you know, like we have the Zoom, and we're having the technical difficulties with the breakouts. That it's like, as people, we're trying to catch up with technology, right? So, and as you said before, with the surgeon who was saying that they're not good with computers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's ridiculous. It's the computers should be working for you. The fact, yeah.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead. This is such a great discussion. I'm glad we did. I mean, what I noticed after the social dilemma is I also had the same reaction as you, Jessica. And then I must have been talking to some friends, and I knew this, but I had to remind myself, we are not the customer of Facebook. We are not the customer necessarily of Google. Those are free services to us. Facebook, I think we are the product, actually. And so again, I go back to the business model. I don't think I'm going to change, you know, global tech business model. But if we start to think about this usability revolution, it should include that, right? That's an interesting business model. And I am like a moth to a fly, just like you were saying, Jessica. In fact, I had a great Instagram and following, and I got hacked, and now it's over. And, you know, part of me is like, oh, one less, not so bad. But, you know, I'm not going to go back. But it's also like, it's confusing. I mean, I found old friends from my childhood on Facebook. Like, it's great, but it's also, once I realized I'm the product there. No
Yeah.
wonder it's not working for me.
Yeah. But kudos to the guy who put that out. I mean, to come forward like that, and we just, I'm optimistic, maybe naive too in some respects, but it's yeah, I mean, that gives me hope in society and in our culture, that there are people who want to warn, who still want to warn us. And I think too, especially now with, I think there's a lot of distrust in other humans and, these tribes and forming, and we're becoming more and more polarized, and this is not a good thing, So, I mean, maybe forget AI, how can we all, as humans, come together and, build trust in each
Well,
other?
if we do it, the machines should follow. So that's what this is all about. Like these speaker series, like I was saying, the other one that I've now done 3 on the same topic. Usable angst, all about like body worn cameras and police community interactions, similar kinds of things. Like, wait, how did we get here? How can we fix it? And to me, it's still part of a usability problem because, our world isn't usable. Forget Zoom and the breakout groups, but like this big picture that we're talking about. So I just, from my part, I'll just keep having these dialogues with people, whoever wants to keep
And
doing it.
this is great. This
And
is helping.
keep going, right? So Simon, maybe this will get some things going out there in Australia. You can come back and we could talk more. And I know there's a few other people, I think, still on from several other countries. And that's the whole point of World Usability Day. It's totally about, we're all human on the planet and we all want to make technology work for us. We want to make everything work for us because we want to me, we should be the best we could be.
Yeah. I think it's also, it's generational as well, because, I consider myself, relatively old now, older and wiser, I guess. But I'm the family tech support, right? So if anybody has a computer or an electrical problem even, then I'll give tech support to my family in Australia, over the phone or with video conferences. And this was, even before Zoom, or when you had dial-up modems to access the internet, and my parents are saying, I can't send this email, it's not working, then I'd have to use my know-how of the technology at the time to navigate all that and get them working with the technology again. But not everybody has the same benefit of having me as tech support. So how does that? But tech is getting better because now everybody has a smartphone. And so they're able to do, your FaceTime or Google video calls or whatever. That's commonplace. My mother-in-law just recently got tired of her, 10-year-old phone. She wasn't able to do, video calls like everybody else was. So, she asked me, what phone do I pick? And as, I'd say anything you can get the most basic model now, and it's going to be tons better than what you currently got, what you've been working with. So yeah, but that's an example of how they she thought, I have a phone, it makes phone calls, what else do I need a phone for?
Right.
And so now we've got the video calls and stuff like that. She wants to see her grandkids and things like that. So she's seeing the benefit of having updated technology. But to get to that jump, she's had to make a jump from 10-year-old technology to current technology, and that's a difficult challenge, is
Right.
to keeping up with the upgrades in technology, right?
Especially
So
when it's fairly new to her too. Yeah. And
exactly. So yeah, the whole migration effort, when you're designing user experiences, how different is this, whatever it is that you're designing, how different is it from what currently exists?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's huge. I mean, I know my parents are in their 80s and because of the pandemic, and when I say I have three sons, two of them are the tech support for the family. So I'm happy about that. But it's the same thing. My dad keeps, we Google Meet because it has captions, because it's hard to hear. He bounces out of Google Meet every single time because he accidentally hits the leave button instead of, I think, whatever must be next to it. It's just, we're like, oh, there's grandpa. Okay, he's back. It's just, so.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad, today he's 86, and he still, I mean, he doesn't get around much anymore, but he will not do online banking. He will not deposit a check. He will not take a picture of a check. He doesn't even have a credit card anywhere on the internet. He has never, paid with a credit card. Just trust. It's trust, and it's generational. And, he's gotten by, and now he's, 86. He doesn't need to, but for some of us who, don't have that exposure, and now it's almost like there is no other option. Bank tellers go away. They will go away. And so booking, travel agents are going to go away. I mean, there are these things, and sometimes it's a good thing because they can be used, they can do other jobs that are much more important. And, but it's also really hard as a user or a user group to try to stay up with, what's going on and not feel isolated. And I think that this pandemic too has really, put an exclamation point behind, society and being isolated, and how much we rely on technology for our work, and the positives have come out of that too, because some of us, I should say, not most of us, are able to continue working from home, and that's due to technology, to be isolated, and yet, but.
So I think we're at time, actually, as wonderful as this is. So I just want to thank everyone for sticking with us with the technical difficulties. Thank you, Simon, for adding a lot of good thoughts here that I hadn't. I hope you'll stay in touch with us. And just appreciate it next time. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, sorry, just say put me on your mailing list. I'm happy to.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a good day.
Good holiday, everybody.
Yep, you too.
Bye.